Hello, I am Radagast, and this is Global Mission of Peace TV, Mystic View, and I'm here with my co-host, Shelley. Hello, Shelley.
Hello, hello everyone.
And our topic tonight, let me read it so I don't get it wrong, is technology implications, the good, the bad, the questionable, and the cosmic. And we're going to start off with the good. And I hear something, Shelley, you have that, a piece of technology, but there's a story with it, with this man, Patrick Flanagan. Is that the right name?
Oh, Patrick Flanagan. We're going to start with the best of the best, are we? Okay, so Patrick Flanagan developed in the late 50s.
At what age?
At age 13, that it finally came to light through one of his school science fairs, and suddenly Navy. It was the Navy suddenly appeared to take away his science project and tell him that it was actually above top secret, and even he wasn't supposed to know. Anyways, this led to the development of Patrick working with them, and eventually he had developed the neurophone. But the story before the neurophone comes by way of one of their projects was to communicate with cetacean, with the dolphins, and it was Patrick that was able to develop this technology. I think it was 30 words he had developed where he could communicate in English to the dolphins, for example, and the dolphins would chirp back to him, and I think they had a vocabulary of about 30 words. But anyway, so the neurophone was a speech processing device, we'll call it, that came out of that research, where it balances the left and right brain hemispheres, and even has given the ability to people who are deaf to be able to hear. So to hear, for example, whatever, music, video, yeah, recorded music. So okay, I'll show you a little example. This is his neurophone device. You put it on like a headphone. It's got some transducers. There's different settings on it, but really the fun thing about that is that they're calling it an electronic telepathy machine, because that's the skill that it enables you to develop. They're saying it's the equivalent of having been a monk training for 30 years to do meditation, and they're making that kind of the equivalent analogy for how useful it is. So it enables you to raise your IQ. It enables you to retain greater memory. People who are deaf that can't hear through bone conduction because the nerves in the inner ear are not functional, through surgery, they've been able to hear with the neurophone.
Now, from an anatomical or more, scientific, for scientific language, if I recall, it enables a signal to be sent to the eighth cranial nerve, also known as the vestibulocochlear nerve, and so apparently it's able to take what that nerve would do, I guess, feeding in from the tympanum of the eardrum, which is the tympanum and eardrum are synonymous. And that turns sound into signals that are picked up by the eighth cranial nerve. And then, of course, that comes into the brain, and it's a decoder, really. And so apparently this is able to take the signals the information that the eardrum would turn into signals for that nerve, bypass the nerve, and send it to the receptor sites of that nerve. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the neurophone actually introduces ultrasonic waves. So whether it's voice or music or pulsating sounds, it induces the brain wave state through the skin. And there's a lightweight transducer. I could show it to you. I don't know if you'd be able to see it very clearly. Where the sound, do you see that okay?
Yeah.
The sound penetrates the brain. And the fun thing about it is that it's the ancient unused hearing organ, the saccule. And that is the key organ in the dolphin's ability to use ultrasonic sound to communicate and navigate. That's why those two pieces kind of fit together like that. But yeah, years of Dr. Flanagan's research on dolphin human communication for the U.S. Navy is what led to these kind of breakthroughs and advancing this neurophone. Now he's got a lot of other impressive kind of technical contributions that he has developed. Everything from making water better able to be structured.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got, he has a number of patents. Most people have kind of accepted that he is the reincarnation of Tesla, and you know, that's not to be contested or anything. That's just the level of his brilliance.
Mm-hmm. Well, structured water, I mean, we get that from, you know, a number of sources, and how important that is. I mean, Victor Schauberger, the water wizard.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, it's really that the structure comes through vorticity.
Right.
And vorticity is a big part of what we're talking, like when we've had Dan Winter on 3 times. And it is that vorticity or implosion, that implosive force rather than, you know, centripetal rather than centrifugal, which is spinning out. Spinning out is centrifugal. Centripetal is pulling into the middle like a tornado, which is a vortex.
Mm-hmm.
And vorticity is vortex action. Just so in case, I want to make sure that the English we're using gets across to everybody.
Well, it was back in '62 that Patrick predicted that the electromedicine is going to revolutionize kind of the conventional healthcare. You know, just simple. It seems simple now, but blood and lymph cleansing. You know, and anyways, carry on. What were you going to say there?
Well, again, we mentioned at the end of the last Dan Winter show, which was kind of a little bit on the subject. And that's why we're kind of doing a follow-up here, because once Dan Winter's on, who wants to interrupt him, you know, with our other ideas. And so we're kind of bringing back some of the technology and how it can be good for human beings. Right now we're on the good part. We're going to get to the bad part and to the questionable part and to the cosmic part. But while we're on the good part, and we mentioned also, so there's a Therify, which has its own coherence. But we also mentioned the Theraplate, which is something that veterinarians are using for horses. And the interesting thing is, since we're on the subject of vorticity, if you know, there's a vibration to the Theraplate, vibrate, whatever. If you put a glass of water on a Theraplate, a whirlpool develops in the glass of water. So again, we're getting back to vorticity and the coherence of implosive energy, which is tied into 0-point energy. I mean, actually, when you get to a vortex, it kind of goes down to a 0 point, and that's where it's the most concentration.
One of the things I love about all these technologies is because it's validating that our current model of education is obsolete. We know that, but now we've got the means to say, well, here, we can replace it.
Yes.
It's all done.
Well, we can replace it provided truly educated individual sovereign beings are what we want. And I know that as a human being, that's what we want. But are the people who are setting up our education systems, is that really what they want? And my answer to that would have to be no.
And my answer to that is, let's set up our own education systems. We don't need them to do it for us. They have been failing.
Oh, but how are my children going to get one of those good-paying jobs in one of those predatory corporations?
Oh, we didn't want to get to the bad that quick, did we?
No, we're not there.
We're still on the good?
That was the humorous.
Well, 0-point energy abounds, but we can reveal other kind of out-of-this-world technology before we come back to that.
Well,
Project Bluebeam.
Okay, I was just because I was going to introduce holography, which is
yes.
So why don't you take it a little bit, if you want?
Okay, so Project Bluebeam is holography, but really what we're going to do is come back and show you how lasers are actually the up-and-coming, very beneficial medical treatment. But so, yeah, Project Bluebeam is important for the people who haven't been familiarized with it for what the illusion that it can produce. So, for example, in Dubai, the hotels there use holography to put on shows for the tourists. It looks like right in front of you there's a whale jumping out of the water, and you're going to feel like you're getting splashed. You know, it looks like lions and tigers are running through the crowds. With three-dimensional simulation, these optical holograms and sounds and laser projections of multiple holographic images can be projected even to different parts of the world simultaneously. So, for example, if some government wanted to pull an illusion and make it look like there was going to be a Star Wars, or say the return of some religious figure, Christ, Buddha, they could make all of that happen simultaneously, whereby you would see the image, you would feel it in your body, you would hear it, the voice of God kind of technology. And that's a little bit what Patrick Flanagan had initiated by bypassing the ears and making available sound that you would just hear that in your head. So take it away.
Well, I mean, that's where we were kind of doing the pre-show prep, and I was understanding what the technology of being able to hear things inside your head without your ears. Mm-hmm. The fact that in 1958, this technology was taken into Navy intelligence. Mm-hmm. And of course, one branch of intelligence, it's into the intelligence or the black ops world, so to speak. Yeah. And so we're tying in a couple of things here where with holography, which is laser-based, we'll talk a little more about lasers, you can project the image, but also with, I'm quite sure with an extrapolation of Patrick Flanagan's technology, I'm quite sure there are coherent beams that could be produced where you hear the voice of God in your head. So you can kind of create the illusion, not only will Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or, you know, or the Mahdi appear on a mountaintop or a flying saucer or whatever, but you would also be able to hear the same holograph speak. And in many ways, no matter what language you spoke, you would hear it, because it's really kind of going, there would be different ways of sending on different bands. But I can really see how they took his technology, and that might be what is now rumored to be the voice of God technology, which supposedly was used on the Iraqi troops who came screaming out of their bunkers because they were hearing something in their head, or surrender or die or whatever. And so I believe that this technology has been battle tested. And so, you know, we're kind of coming into, once again, the good, this, the Vodafone, the neurophone.
The neurophone. Yeah. So, now this is old technology. This isn't even recent technology. This is research done over the past 25 years. The Soviets perfected an advanced computer and even exported them and fed them with minute psychological, particulars based on their study of the anatomy and electromechanics. They can project this in minute detail now, mm-hmm. in every language simultaneously.
So with holography, now holography is basically laser generated, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and laser is an acronym which stands for light amplification stimulated emission radiation. Mm-hmm. Okay, just so we kind of, you know, we often use so many terms, whether it's 0 point, quantum, whatever, and to bring some language that's everyday language that can kind of get us a little closer to what we're dealing with. So really, it's light amplification. It's stimulated in a certain way, and there's an emission radiation. So now, also with regard to laser technology, I mean, we all are aware of acupuncture. Now, some people who may not have experienced it or may have experienced it by somebody. So, I mean, there are plenty, especially in the United States. I mean, we have really good acupuncture schools, but they don't really let the guys who've been doing it for thousands of years come over here often and teach, unless they want to spend another 10 years getting the pieces of paperwork or allow them to teach what they've been practicing for 50 years. And so in many ways, I feel that the United States has a a competent, we'll call it competent, but it doesn't, very often it's lacking because the people who really know it and could teach it are prevented because when they ask via your papers, they don't have the papers. And again, we get kind of back to our educational system is like just exactly how good is it? But anyway.
Who's it serving? Who's it serving?
Who's it serving?
That's a different.
Yes, and basically when it comes to paperwork, somebody needs to get paid so you can get a piece of paper, and that's really what it kind of comes down to. I mean, I know there's some competence and some form of trying to quality control things, but I don't know. It seems a lot more financial than quality control. And so, but anyway, really competent acupuncture is brilliant. And really competent acupuncture is meant to be a preventive medicine. I mean, in the West, we think about, oh, we have a problem, we go get it treated. Where in the East, at least in traditional Chinese medicine, you see your acupuncturist regularly because you can do pulse diagnosis and feel what's coming on and treat it before it manifests. So it's not a symptom thing. In the United States, we're often symptom related. So we're practicing acupuncture like after its ideal insertion point. But anyway, for those people who think, oh, well, I don't know if I like needles, that's where lasers can come in. Lasers, there we go. There's a laser light pen. And you can use the energy, the stimulated light on your acupoints, and you can get the same kind of energy generation that putting a needle in those same, in Japanese where it's tsubo, acupuncture points. And although the one thing, now if you're going to stimulate one acupuncture point, I can see that, but part of acupuncture is multiple point stimulation simultaneously, which would be, that would be a pretty tricky laser array.
30 practitioners, ready?
Like Jedi Knights.
Or sound. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, actually, no, we're still on the good.
Okay, well,
so,
good.
So we've got things like the Neurophone, Theraphi, Theraplate, holography, which is tied into lasers, and and one of the good things about lasers, right, can use them for healing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get too much because I don't want to step on anybody's proprietary toes, but we are aware if somebody is developing something with regard to certain kind of cellular regeneration using certain coherent lasers meeting at maybe at a certain angle and creating an effect that might even be able to turn back the clock biologically.
Ooh, that's what I'm hearing. Well, if we just remember that we're more than atoms and molecules that make up our bodies, we are actually beings of light. We're biophotons that are emitted by the human body. We receive those photons. That photon that's energy. That's not just, it's information packets that we are receiving, but also emitting simultaneously. Right? Yeah. So it's cell-to-cell communication with DNA, and that's how that laser technology would be able to turn back time.
Well, I mean, the aura in many ways is a form of bioluminescence in a spectrum that the average eye does not perceive.
Yes.
I mean, basically, we see one octave. We see from red up until violet, where it turns into red, another form of red, and then disappears from sight. So that means now we pick up from red again, and then we go through the whole spectrum. And in the aura, I think what we're seeing is basically the next octave up of the same rainbow.
Yeah. Well, those biophotons, I think, are about 1,000 times lower than the sensitivity that our naked eye would be required to see.
So in certain ways, I mean, again, with our visible spectrum, it also goes backwards. I mean, it's like a piano key. If what we see is the equivalent of middle C, we're going to have a few octaves above and a few octaves below. Of course, it kind of goes a lot more than just a few, more than just a piano. So in which case I postulated, and maybe incorrectly, that we're seeing the above light frequencies. We might be seeing actually the ones below visible spectrum in the aura.
Yeah. So our earthly existence is partially formed from sunlight and requires the continual consumption of condensed sunlight, right, in the form of, well, food. And so that brings us really to some more pretty cool technology that NASA is doing with the solar probe, the Solar Probe Plus, they're calling it. That's set to launch, what, a week or two, actually just a couple days ago, I think. If it actually launched, it was supposed to, I think, launch July 31st.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so anyways, they are intending to fly that thing right into the corona of the sun, and that is all about maybe small d disclosure, just to let you know that they're actually talking about picking up and understanding the particles that are being emitted from the sun, the solar wind, the plasma.
Well, I have to when they're going that close to the sun, I mean, into the corona, which is basically the atmosphere of the physical sun. Excuse me a second. It seems to me they could also pick up quite a bit of information from being almost anywhere in the solar system. Prior to the show, I looked up heliosphere. I was wondering if the heliosphere and the corona were similar. And no, actually, the heliosphere is what our solar system is contained in. And in many ways, our solar system is in what could be considered a cell. Just like think of an amoeba with a shape, or any kind of other singular cellular organism. Solar system is basically a singular cellular organism. And like most organisms have protoplasm, or, that kind of, that goo in them. Our cellular system is filled up with plasma. And you might have heard the term dark matter. You hear what we see is like 3% of all matter in the solar system, and the rest is quote unquote dark matter. Basically, dark matter is plasma that's coming from the sun, and it is matter. It just hasn't quite it hasn't slowed down. But most of the matter is in our heliosphere, and it's the equivalent of the cytoplasm in a cell. And just like most of a cell is filled with cytoplasm, well, most of our solar system is filled with plasma, and it's basically the same thing. And that's really what dark matter is plasma.
I think it's pretty cool too that the hologram idea, right? That every cell in your body has the complete hologram of the entire universe. So as they're doing this, the star mapping position of all the major stars and constellations would be able to provide exact dates and times of everything that's ever happened on the planet. That would be an accurate history, right? Okay, and so also, since the declassification of another technology about, I don't know how long ago, 2 years ago at least, the ground penetrating radar described the Buseji Mountains as being the location of one of these containment tunnels of technology that does, in fact, describe the accurate history of our, solar system for sure, maybe beyond that. And the technology is something that's been available, been here, been active for, I can't tell you, countless years. It's only just recently that these sorts of technologies are being released to the public and letting us know about it. So to me, it's a lot of little d disclosures. Even Patrick Flanagan couldn't release his technology, since 1958 till just last year.
And only this, what I would consider to be a limited version of it, really.
A very limited version. Yeah, they're just slipping out little bits.
Well, I mean, and then to me, there's even, against the covers, let's take the pyramids. Pyramids have often been described as power generators. And then, so people go, well, why isn't there any power? And go, Earth changes or something. And that's what they're telling us, that the pyramids don't work because something changed on the Earth. What I'm looking at the pyramids is but wait a second, they have their capstones removed. The reason why they're not generating power is because they've been decommissioned or dismantled. I mean, it's like if you take the battery out of your high-tech, out of your iPhone or out of your cell phone, it won't do anything. Well, if you take the capstone off a pyramid, you don't really quite have a pyramid yet. And
Right.
so I would really be intrigued to see what would happen on the Giza Plateau with capstones placed on the tops of those pyramids where they're missing. I mean,
Oh,
I
that'd be
really think that one of the reasons why they seem like, oh, they don't work anymore is because they took pieces off of them. They dismantled them.
well, and the pyramids are another a wonderful example of actual technology. But if we think even of the Sphinx at the Giza Plateau and have to question, okay, why is it staring in the eyes, the Sphinx at the Buseji Mountains? How was it that when that technology at the Buseji Romanian location was activated, that it also activated the same technology in Iran, places like Guatemala, the South Americas? Those tunnels have been mapped under the Mayan pyramids. There's pyramids that are aligned all over this planet, even in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
That if they were all activated, it could happen.
And I mean, any number of, Dan Winter, it kind of explains that with a lot of like even radionic devices or transmission of healing. If you do those things on ley lines, the ley lines carry the energy, and all of these sacred sites are on major ley lines, major good ones. Because I mean, there's also like Bermuda Triangle and stuff like that in the water, and those are other things, and they're all based kind of on the dodecahedral shape of the energy grid on the Earth. But from those points on the dodecahedrons, there are other radii that create other nexus points.
That's right. You know what? I said that wrong. I said Iran. It was actually in Baghdad, so that makes it Iraq.
Okay.
But it was shortly after that discovery that the Iraqi war broke out. And
Now,
you know what that is, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. After a few months, only the Americans had access to the biggest secret in that area. And that was something I think even the Iraqi population probably didn't know about.
No, and I think it was Joseph P. Farrell, who really is a great GizaDeathStar.com. I mean, he puts out his news from the Nefarium, great stuff, and he is a brilliant man. And you know, a lot of the stuff he'll put out on world events will keep it fairly normal. But you get to hear him speak on some of these shows or his books. Oh man, the guy is a genius, and he takes it there, but he doesn't take you. He takes you into woo-woo in really grounded language and concepts and history. And I think it was he who put forward the idea that when the Americans went into Iraq, just like Shelley just mentioned, and we were looking for weapons of mass destruction, that we weren't looking for nuclear necessarily, or biochemical, or nerve gas agents like that. We were actually looking for the old tech that we read about in some of the Vedas, and also in certain Sumerian texts. They talk about, you know, these battles between the gods, and these bursts of energy that turned lakes dry and burned the flesh of horses and men alike, and just reduced forests to ash. So two things could do that, and they're pretty much similar. I mean, you have a nuclear explosion, which is really a plasma ball, or you could just have a plasma generation. So I really think that in many ways, like just the way that the controllers like to work is they like to say, but we told you the truth. You just didn't quite understand the language we used. Kind of like when the police say to serve and protect, you know, when they're serving and protecting the government, okay? And where everybody thinks, oh, they're serving and protecting us. So if it ever seems like, gee, the police, you know, again, we're not knocking them per se, but they were formed for a reason, and it wasn't to protect us. It was to protect them from riots. They came about in England and the United States, both in the 1800s, and both of them were an answer to riots. And who were they protecting? They were protecting the town halls. I mean, basically, they hired a small army to protect them from the people. Okay, so the genesis of the police, at least in America and Europe, and Britain, which may have been set up for around the world, was in response to the people being unhappy with either the corporations or the government, and they needed an army, so they hired the police. So when you see and I'm quite sure even the average policeman still thinks he's there to take care of you. I really believe that. So, and when they see serve and protect, they might even think they're there to serve and protect you. But again, these people are cagey. And so in many ways, they can't really do what they do without informing you. So when you see to serve and protect us, please understand, even if the officer himself doesn't understand it, because he's really one of us. They don't pull officers out of the elite. They pull them out of the streets where we come, where they were our compatriots, or like I think they still are. And then they kind of, they do a little voodoo on them and turn them into,
little conditioning.
A little conditioning. That's it. That was the word, conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Well, now it sounds like we're off to HAARP, a giant array of microwave towers. I mean, that's about.
Okay. Have you pulled up what HAARP stands for?
Oh, no. Did you?
No, but I will do that in a second.
Microwave towers.
Because I want to do due diligence, because I don't, just like we do with laser.
Okay. Well, it's 1 billion plus watts of power.
Yeah, it stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. And really what it's meant to stimulate the ionosphere. It's actually meant to heat it up. And by heating it up, you can start controlling things. And it isn't just for weather control, but that's certainly one of the things it can do.
Well, that's what they like to claim, and they like to use it in conjunction with our chemtrails. And that works into their Project Bluebeam schemes. But, that kind of takes us off into sort of the negative technologies. Did we want to go there? Because there's an awful lot of technologies that are being claimed to do great things for people, especially in the medical industry, that are like lame at best. I mean, we always will have our 33% placebo effect where, hey, at least you're going to maybe fall into the placebo. But
right.
Okay. Are we ready for that?
We're just about to finish up with the good. I guess we've kind of done what I'm going to call tech. Then we could maybe get into biotech, which very briefly I might get into how when dolphins approach people, they kind of make these little almost sounds like a Geiger counter. They're emitting sound waves that they're actually sending through you, and they're also going to get some back, almost like a bat negotiating a cave. And I believe that dolphins use this in two ways. I think one would be the reading, where they kind of beam you and get something back. And then based on their information, they can then beam you in ways based on the information they got. It's almost like, let me get a reading. Okay, now what's off here is this. Let me do a couple of G's and then blast it into you. Shelley, you were telling me about like certain very autistic children have responded well when in the presence of dolphins.
Absolutely. And so I don't know that even that's understood well enough to describe it, because dolphins have an ability to create more of a telepathic, organic resonance with the humans. Mm-hmm. Where they can hold simply a frequency and raise the frequency.
And correct also.
Of the child into balance. So they're actually balancing the left and right brain hemisphere, but also releasing all of those stressful conditions in the body, but also at the same time, they're really connecting on an emotional and psychological level of a much higher frequency. It's literally lighter. Much lighter. And so, of course, the autistic children are tremendously helped just by being in the presence. But I know from being in the water with whales, from doing this kind of research with the communication of cetaceans, that just being close to them is so blissful. Mm-hmm. So I totally understand the mechanics of it, although I don't have perhaps the language to rigorously describe how that takes place. It's a fact. Been there. It's a fact. A very blissful experience.
So we're talking about frequencies, and because it really is about coherence, which is so much at what Implosion is about, what Dan with Dan Winter speaking about the coherence of patterns, creating, because much of either illness, whether it's physical illness or emotional illness, is about non-coherence. I mean, things aren't spinning right; they're clunking around, and there's no real symmetry to them. It's, like the difference between those beautiful crystals that Dr. Emoto gets when you're thinking good thoughts, and then the misformed crystals that formed with ugly thoughts, like thinking hate or war or whatever. And the crystals actually don't have symmetry. And so symmetry and coherence are basically the same thing, where it's like a fan. You need 3 equal fan blades for a fan. If you have one bigger than the other, you're going to get a wobble. And that's the equivalent of being ill, or at a mental or physical level, that lack of coherence between the parts. And since everything's in motion, any lack of balance creates a wobble. And a wobble is going to throw you. You have to, it's kind of like that gyroscope. And the beauty of the gyroscope is a gyroscope can move, but it moves around with coherence. And it moves around with spin.
Well, any of those perturbations of your magnetic field are going to have distinct changes even in your memory, in how you hold short-term memory. And in fact, telepathy often occurs most often when the geomagnetic disturbances are quieter. Mm-hmm. So it has an awful lot to do with the magnetics as well, and even is affected directly by the fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field. So I guess just can't remember a thing. That's probably what's going on.
So I guess I'll close out the good part, because we're really talking on vibrations and coherence, with the woo-woo part of it. But when I say woo-woo, I mean like the truly non-tech in a way. And that would be healing modalities like flower essences and gem elixirs. Now, in each case, they're even beyond homeopathy, where in this case, although you're using physical things, there's no grinding up, there's no succussion, where the way you get the energy into the distilled water, with the exception of Bach flower essences, which are actually like spring water, according to Dr. Bach. But the books that are written on, like the flower essences, the Flower Essence Society, the ones that Garuda's put out, that Pegasus Nows carry, including the gem elixirs, they're all done into distilled water because they want a clear plate. In other words, no minerals in it, so that the etheric imprint that comes into the water only has the imprint of the plant. And what is the actual engine that drives the imprinting? The sun. Mm-hmm. To do these things, you would take distilled water, and with flower essence, you actually float the flower on the water and expose it to sun for about 2 hours. And it's those photons and the energy then passing through the consciousness of the flower, kind of like when you're talking about lasers or turning frogs into tadpoles. I mean, for salamanders. And we can close up on that. So basically, the plasma energy, because coherent energy goes through the flower and enters the water and takes the consciousness of the flower, because flowers are about consciousness. And then when you take some of that water, that consciousness is able to come into you at the quantum field, and it brings coherence to specific states. And that's why the Bach flower essences don't address diseases so much as they address certain kinds of mental conditions. And mental conditions are often the precursors of physical ailments. And then with the case of crystals are very specific frequency lattices. And also, of course, they're crystals with certain different minerals in them. Sometimes there's metals in part of them. And these all have different signatures. And so when you take the crystal and put that in the distilled water, and then the sun is stimulating it in an almost laser-like fashion, and then this signature gets released into this clear distilled water that is just like in many ways dead, and now it kind of wakens it up with this coherence. And when you take these drops and introduce them to your body, there are certain coherences, and that's why there are certain gem elixirs that address your skin, your adrenals, the kidneys instead of just the adrenals, the heart, the liver, the gallbladder. I mean, and it's about bringing, and sometimes it's not just the liver, but it might be, not enough bile production. I mean, it's actually broken down. It's, and some of the names like jade, one of his names is nephrite. So nephritis actually is a condition of the kidneys. So that kind of, some of these names will actually give you a little bit of what we call doctrine of signature, of that although the green color of jade would let you know it has an affiliation with the heart, part of it has to do with the effect that the adrenals will have on the heart, because of the adrenals sit. Adrenal it really means on top of the renals, which is the kidneys. That's what it's actually adrenal, and we call them adrenals, but it means atop the kidney. And so anyway, this is work. You know, it's all about this. So we went from like kind of tech to vibrational tech, but it's all working on coherence and energy, and much of this tech is really based around healing tech as opposed to calling somebody kind of tech, because really cell phone is a replacement for telepathy in many ways, and telepathy comes without the threat of cooking your brain with radiation. So
and really, that's what all of these technologies are about, to inch us closer to when we embrace the fact that we actually have this ability within us innately, organically anyways. So for example, when Masaru Emoto demonstrated that you could pray over your food or over your water and it would retain the signature of that thought, that's really good to know when there's some guru out there trying to sell you their machine for $1,000 or $500 to program it to do, you know, what was it? What God wanted or something? What was that one?
Well, we'll get into that when we get into the ridiculous or the questionable.
Yeah, the questionable.
That's
well,
coming up. Because
jumping ahead.
I will.
Okay.
with the crystals we finished up on the good. So we kind of, by mentioning cell phones, we're kind of getting to the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because as good as a communication, and of course, you know, they give us GPS, and if you were caught in the woods, GPS and being able to tell somebody you're stuck in the woods is great. Again, this is, and when we're saying bad, doesn't mean they're exclusively bad, but it's kind of been documented that at least the radiation that comes off cell towers to make your cell phone work isn't particularly good for the energetic system of the body. The ones that come off of smart meters, not particularly good for the body. And holding a phone up to your head could possibly create something going on with your brain. Holding your phone in your pocket could affect your fertility. All right, so again, when we say the bad, it's not to say, you know, like, again, good, it's relative. It's not black or white. But when we talk about these technologies, which we might think are good, we want to make sure that we're kind of looking at the bad. And ultimately what they're reminding us of is kind of like, well, if you're going to get rid of cell phones, you guys better get telepathic. And if you're going to get telepathic, you better start getting into a loving place where you're not hiding a bunch of secrets from somebody else, because you're one of the 7 deadly sins are happening in your head, and you clearly don't want somebody to know what you're thinking, because it isn't pretty. And so what do? You close your mind, and telepathy can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have other bad technologies? And then what is that genius pill you were talking about?
Oh, the Geniax. Yeah, the Geniax has been touted to be the one single pill that's going to change humanity. So the Geniax has undergone all the beta testing and all those types of testings, and I think it's being released, but it is reported to increase your IQ, like 300%. I'm probably underestimating because it was very substantial, but the question is it really safe? So after 7 years, the Harvard scientists, kind of finally said, hey, we have this invention of a new smart drug that increases IQ, memory, and focuses. Your ability to focus increases tremendously. And also it gives you this lift of
mood,
of happiness. It just kind of makes you feel all happy and and boosted, and it's considered to be a brain boosting smart drug that surpasses all limits of known science. And so I'm saying, I don't know, I'm not thinking this is the way to go. If it's a pharmaceutical and there's nanotechnologies, we didn't cover nanotechnologies.
Well, to me,
yeah, guys, I'm not sure. When we have the ability within ourselves to do this naturally, I'm not sure I want to be taking a drug, pharmaceutical.
Well, to me, again, now we're talking about there are certain in exterior applications, nanotechnologies in many ways are great. Nanotechnology in the body, we're starting to get into possible programming, actual, through nanochips, and the very important subject of transhumanism, where basically man merges with technology rather than merging with nature. I mean, we come out of nature. I don't think it's in the plan to leave nature. I don't think it means to be anti-technology, but I don't think we're supposed to move from nature into machines. Because I have a feeling that at some level, somebody's going to stay all biological and just be running the machines. Well, kind of a little bit, robotics. So to me, something like GenieX smells of transhumanism to me. And transhumanism is one of the big marketing things. People, you can live forever, or you can live many years beyond. But but to me, it's not wholesome. It's not like we're taking our actual DNA and finding ways to reduce the shortening of the telomeres, which would allow us to stay youthful and live long lives as regular biological creations, as we were created by the creator of the universe. I mean, I don't ever want to leave the spiritual. A lot of people, I feel that some of the lure of transhumanism is to pull people out of where did we come from? Our spirits, our bodies, this planet, this biosphere, this beautiful setting we have with the sun. I mean, there's a setup here. There is a intelligent design. So for some people, some people confuse intelligent design with creationism. I put creationism as being a little more book-based, where intelligent design to me is observing nature and going, and also getting in touch in meditative states and going, yeah, there's something that keeps all this together. In other words, there is a self-organizing principle in the universe, and then it fractalizes down and down and down and down. And to me, probably the biggest fractalization of this self-organizing universe is the Milky Way galaxy, or any other galaxy you want to look at. Where at the central sun, if you look at any galaxy, I mean, we don't notice it, but at the center of our galaxy, there's like this big ball of plasma. That basically the bands of the galaxy spin around, and we are on the outer band in our particular galaxy, and we're sitting at an odd angle, which is why the Milky Way looks like it almost cuts. It's kind of like on an angle. We see it on this kind of angle looking from Earth. Where if the Earth was in a regular thing, we'd be sitting there because we're like a little skewed. Not that really matters, but you can see. I mean, the Milky Way, you're seeing the outer arm of the outer band of the galaxy. I think if only we could during the day, maybe it's when we're facing towards the center, more towards the galactic center, and then we don't see. We see this kind of band and stars and other things rather than this big plasma ball in the in the center of every galaxy. So we get into the fractalization, and there's just an intelligent design going on here. And transhumanism to me is getting away from that self-organizing principle into technology, and so you'll go, who cares? It'll make me live longer. I'll look good. I'll feel good, and they lose the spirituality, and I think with the loss of spirituality will also come the loss of any kind of real moral center or any kind of sense of what is loving. I think love gets lost in technology.
Well, love, that's our God spark. And why not rely on our God spark? Then A pharmaceutical. Although allegedly, there's a lot of celebrities and athletes that are just like glomming onto it because it's instant. It's instant. Who was it? Oh, somebody Cooper. Who's the? Anyway, doesn't matter. They did a public test with him. He volunteered to do that. Anderson Cooper. That's who it was.
Oh.
Anderson Cooper's results were, pretty fabulous. And so that was kind of a quick sell. A lot of celebrities and athletes are kind of getting the instant fix. So concentration went up by like 300% and improved creative thinking, boosts energy, enhances memory, increases the IQ. All of that is really tempting. I can understand it. I mean,
but he's still Anderson Cooper. He's still mildly creepy. Just a smarter, creepy guy.
No, I don't watch TV, so I'm not really too sure. But
I've only seen a few things, but I mean, I've seen his, rather smarmy personage, and somebody to, it's just like, okay, so you're smarter and you're gonna live longer. Oh, lucky us.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, kind of finishing up with the bad, we're going to get to the questionable.
Oh, the questionable.
Yeah, the questionable. We addressed a little bit that at the end of our close of our Dan Winter one, where we kind of just came back briefly and spoke a little bit about some text, things like the many Rife-based machines out there. And of course, I wasn't completely dissing it. I believe that in many ways that these Rife machines actually have all of the Rife technologies in them. They just don't have the delivery system.
Right.
Rife technology worked, which is why they destroyed it, which is why they destroyed his career. He had to go. And part of it was because he wouldn't sell out. The AMA wanted to use him, but they wanted to make billions of dollars on this healing, and he wouldn't give it up. So they're going, if you're not going to play with us, you're not going to go anywhere, and what's the use of helping people unless we're going to get rich off of it? So it's kind of with Tesla had the way of pulling free energy out of the ground and distributing it, and he was already doing that at Wardenclyffe and Brookhaven, New York, on Long Island. But he just hadn't put out the receiving stations for this yet. So that's when they kiboshed it. They smashed the tower, because if they had left the tower up, somebody might have figured out how to tap into it. And that meant Lilco, which is Long Island Lighting Company, wouldn't have had billing capability. They would have lost billing opportunities. The shareholders would have been very unhappy. So anyway, we're getting to the questionable. So anyway, so like to me, many of the Rife machines are questionable because of their effectiveness. Now, as we said last time, placebo is good in almost 30%, probably a third. So if you have 10 people in a room and you gave them a Rife treatment, anywhere between 3 and 4 of them would come out with improvements from a machine that actually is not operating, but it is. But it can still. Everybody's heard of Rife technology. They've even read books about it. Really worked. It did really work, but that's not what we're getting, which is why it's out again. It's out again because it isn't what it was. The frequencies alone need. I might have mentioned it. Need a tube with an electrode, and then passing through a noble gas like argon, krypton, xenon, to make it coherent, and then it can affect the body. So these machines without those tubes don't work. Which is the Therify machine actually has 2 tubes with passing frequencies through a noble gas. It's probably effective. So then we have, there's any number of machines I've run into. And they're under all kinds of names: SC this, SCR, SCQ, blah blah blah.
Heart rate variabilities. There's all kinds of them.
And my chiropractor had one. Matter of fact, it was pretty darn good at diagnosing. Mm-hmm. I found these machines actually really helpful at reading and getting the information. And yes, based on the information, they could generate the frequencies for you, but the frequencies, but they're supposedly going to go into a quantum, come out. And part of benefiting from the quantum is our ability to decode from quantum. I mean, the whole universe is quantum. Our brain is a quantum decoder. Our senses are quantum decoders. And basically all this quantum soup gets decoded and turned into the world we experience. There is, of course, there's a quantum field, and things travel through the quantum field, but they have to have a receiver. I mean, a radio, what good is, you could be sending underneath a cell tower without your cell phone to decode what's coming out. You don't get anything. Okay, so it's just to send something out into the quantum or the field doesn't mean it can be received, because it has to be either sent in a way that your body is meant to receive, or you have to have an apparatus to change it. So like I said, I worked with a guy who had all this, and I loved the diagnostic part, but the treatment part was pretty lame. Did he have, and he used to, people would call him, oh, can you run the machine for me? And this is back in 2000 that I was doing this. And he would do it, and all kinds of people. And did people improve? Of course people improved, because again, 3 to 4 out of every 10 people who would do this would actually get better. Never mind think they got better, they'd actually get better. Because they were, first of all, they were expecting it. They have the anticipation of that they're doing something that will heal them. They create the neuropeptides that create the healing, and they get better, improve, remiss, whatever. So to say this is a very conditional thing about the effectiveness of these things. But then there's apparently there's certain machines now you can buy the software. And in certain cases, you wonder whether or not the software that was written actually has a lot of information, which it might. But I also have to wonder how much of the programming to do this wasn't more about the same programming that you have to do to make Windows. In other words, the graphical user interface, or the GUI for short. The acronym for graphical user interface is a GUI. And of course, even to have drop-down menus so when you click on something, a bunch of things come out, and setting dates, calendars, all it has to be programmed in. So, somebody could be giving you software with plenty of code written in it, but how much of the code is for healing, and how much of the code is so that you have drop-down windows and things, and pretty things, and signs, and whatever, change the color of your window or something. Again, that's all code. So, I don't know, because this stuff's proprietary, so we don't know. But when you're programming, we're not going to mention any names or something, although apparently one of these things was the selling point is that this person has great martial arts skills. I'm not sure the word. Grandmaster. Okay. And that somehow this qualifies him because he can use his chi and knock people against the wall. That somehow this is something that, I don't know. I don't know if this machine will knock people against the wall or not. I don't quite get. I've experienced it myself. We all know, anybody who knows has been in martial arts or been anything knows that somebody who can generate chi out of the palm of the hand, knocking against the wall, that's not nonsense. That's very, very real.
Yeah, very real.
We're not talking about these effects. We're talking about putting it into a program that you can buy, and what one thing has to do with the other.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the Grandmaster who did the computer programming also. But anyway, whatever. That's an aside. All we want you people to know is that there is biotechnology that is very useful, but there's a lot of scams.
And part of it is, once again, we have a whole community, we'll call it the alternative community, New Age community. We're interested. We're curious. We are aware that there are better ways. We know it. We know it in our hearts. Okay. And there are people who want to profit off of that knowledge, but not necessarily by delivering. Where it's in the package, it has all the right words, but is it what it says it is? There's a lot of, again, and other people doing this might even not know that they're doing it. There's just, I'm not willing to point. Go ahead.
We're not talking about the intention of the practitioner who was maybe lured in and bought this thing without realizing that they were being scammed. However, what we are saying is that often these programs are less effective than if you would actually pray over your water or bless your food or bless your own self.
Yes.
It's that equivalent.
But I know what.
And you're going to save a lot of dollars.
I did some research on one, and I'm not going to mention the name because this is, again, I'm not out to diss anybody, but just as to give you people an idea of what I think is how they're gauging your intelligence, actually. I mean, what do you think of you as a final end buyer? Okay, how much respect they have for you. Now, of course, this click down button had many selections, and some of them were, look fine, but there were a couple of them I'm like, huh? And so I wrote down, I think, what do I have? I have 5 of them. Of this drop, and one of them was, okay, like let's say, nervous exhaustion, whatever. But one of the selections was all that stuff. All right. Another selection is, I don't know, just fix it. This is on a drop-down menu.
That you're paying for.
The wonder button. Then there's also cocktails. And the last one is miracle of God. Now, for last thing I know, God's miracles are free. You ask for them for free, and if they deliver, they deliver. So I just find the miracle of God as a software program interesting. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so this, again, this was, we had the good, we talked about the bad, this is the questionable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. And then our last topic was the cosmic. Mm. And for me, I mean, and like we're kind of almost coming back full circle with the love and energy that comes into our heliosphere from the sun in the form of the solar wind, that plasma. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is, you had a short time in Dan Winter's Therify device, correct?
I sure did, and that was a very brief experience. I'm really looking forward to my next one, but that has stayed with me, and it's something that I've been able to engage with and learn every single day at any time that I choose to put my attention there. And also I can connect in a much greater capacity with I think greater coherence is what it boils down to. Just the communication with plasma and with understanding what that means. There's all kinds of technologies that involve light, right? Low-level light therapies and photobiomodulation therapies. There's all kinds of things, but we're talking here with the Therify. It was pure plasma. And this is organic and natural to the human body, to the solar system, to the universe. Completely God spark, God-given.
Well, why don't you you've shared a little bit more. If you're not comfortable with sharing, I mean, you actually had what could almost be called like you and I are communicating. You almost had a personal experience with plasma. Yeah.
This is what happened when I went into the Therify device. I didn't have an issue. I'm not sick. I had nothing to ask of it. Whereas most people go in there, I've got a broken hip, or I need something. Okay, so I was a little bit tired, but really what I wanted to do is communicate with the plasma. When I asked to communicate with the plasma, this beautiful, beautiful swirling kind of spiral in the shape of a seahorse, and it was serpentine, but not snake-like. It was ever so graceful and beautiful, and it conveyed an absolute innocence and purity. Like it was brand new, and I could ask it anything. It was absolutely so pure, and the color of it is a really fun fact for me, because my daughter and myself, our favorite color is this kind of pink-yellow combination, and that's exactly the color of this plasma when it appeared to me. So I can just visualize that plasma now, and it's right there and alive, and I can communicate with it, and I have been, and it's pretty fascinating. It's really, really wonderful. It's so loving, but it was so innocent. It was just pure. So that's just my firsthand experience, but there are many around the planet now that Therify is pretty much being populated everywhere. There's a lot of people that would be able to convey their experiences. I'm sure you could just Google them up. Google Therify or Dan Winter, Paul Harris, any of those people.
Now, isn't Therify kind of two tubes? Did you put yourself between the two tubes?
Yes, so they have basically a massage table lined up between the two tubes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I just laid on it. It was important not to have any metal on my body. And it was that simple. It was absolutely beautiful. And really, people talk about feeling like they're going to levitate. I too had to actually sense to see if I'm actually on the table. And given the opportunity to do it more often, I wouldn't waste my connection with the plasma by asking if I'm levitating or not. Like, who really cares? It was a curiosity. And so there's a bit of training that needs to go on, that you learn to ignore those kind of perceptions that come up. And it doesn't matter. You know, it just doesn't matter.
Now, where were the tubes placed? Foot and head?
Yes, foot and head.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it was fabulous.
And also some of our friends, one of our friends, like on the, one of the co-hosts on The Circle,
right?
Linda Kaiser went on it, and she apparently had a bunch of scratches from her cat. Mm-hmm. And she said, like, by the end of the day, almost they were gone. Mm-hmm. Things that would have taken a day. So that was the thing that I think that she noticed the most. And I know there were a couple of people did it, and each one had their own unique experiences. But in her case, she actually had wounds that she said healed up like ridiculously fast after exposure to Therify.
I remember on one of our Mystic Views where we were talking with Dan Winter, he said that one of the fellows that has been in the Therify regularly, he can feel it in his body now whenever anybody on the planet turns one on. That he can feel it. That's oneness. That's what I'm saying. We are just stepping closer and closer to really grasping who and what we really are as human beings, the divine that we are. That's the magic. That's why we don't need GenieX.
Right. Well, it seems to me that what really puts us in coherence is bliss. That actually coherence and bliss are fairly synonymous.
Yes.
And they're also synonymous, I think, with love and wisdom. All of these things that we really want to be part of our moment-to-moment existence basically are fractals of each other, if not the exact same thing, just with, at different levels. But it comes down to the bliss of coherence, because the self-organizing universe is at bliss when it comes into coherence.
And what does that feel like? Interestingly, we describe it as being lighter. Oh, I feel lighter. Happiness is lighter. We are literally becoming lighter.
And that's why depression creates illness, and being happy can help you, generally will keep you well. All right. Well, I think we have a show.
I think
we've covered the good, the bad, the questionable, and the cosmic. And again, the cosmic for me is the sun, and the sun for me is our own like little plasma ball in our own cellular structure, which is moving around in the bigger cellular structure of the Milky Way. Which, if you were to see the Milky Way, it has boundaries, and in the center is the nucleus, which is the central suns. It's kind of, you just get so much plasma in one place. To call it a sun might be incorrect, but it operates. A good galaxy to look at, if you want to Google it, is the Sombrero Galaxy, because we're looking at it straight on, so it looks almost like a sombrero, and you can see the edges, and then you just see this ball of plasma sitting in there, and one of it kind of making it almost like a sombrero shape. And that's just like kind of where all the stars are together. So instead of being separate stars, they're just this one big ball of plasma, and then I guess it's little bits of plasma come out that can create their own stars, whatever. I mean, I don't know exactly what star generation is.
The point is, if you're looking into the cosmos through a telescope, and what you see when you're looking, say, at brain tissue through a microscope, they're identical.
Yes.
Even their names are the same. How mysterious is that?
Yes. When I was looking at some really like almost like high magnification of various kinds of tissue, to me, it was like looking at different pictures of like nebulae and different things in the galaxy. It was really like looking at, really good Hubble, or more correctly, like Chandra telescope, radio telescope stuff. I mean, it was so amazing to see the same patterns because it's a fractal universe. It's just a matter of scale.
Scale.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us here. Thank you, Shelley, for another great show.
It was fun. Thanks.
And we thank you all, and God bless you all. See you next time.